all, I'm Richard Burnham, aka the Indie Lawyer. Welcome back to the first Fan Game Takedown of 2020. In the first installment of Fan Game Takedown, we looked at Pokemon Uranium version, a fan take on the Pokemon series. Now, as we discussed in that video, fan games are usually intellectual property infringement on a nuclear level, pun intended. But can you ever have a fan game that's legitimate? And if so, how can you go about making it legal? So on the point of legal fan games, let's talk about the Fangame Installation 01, fan game based on the Halo series. Ah, Halo, what a game series. Halo 3 is one of my all-time favourite games. It had basically everything. A gripping story, amazing multiplayer, the Forge, incredible maps, vehicles, swords and snipers, emotional deaths, endless betrayals, teabagging, and one hell of a soundtrack. With that in mind, and given Halo's popularity, it's hardly surprising there's a lot of fan-made content out there, Red vs Blue probably being the most known example of this, and one of my favourites, RB and the Chief. We also saw the release of fan alterations to the abandoned Halo Online, which took a gravity hammer to the knee from Microsoft lawyers. Now, Installation 01 is a multiplayer-only take on the Halo series, currently in development by the Installation 01 team, Soon Studios, which is headed up by developers The Chunkier Bean and Church. No, not that Church. Now, the game's developed using the Unity game engine with the intention of replicating the multiplayer aspects of Halo 1 to 3, and with a bit of reach thrown in for good measure. So it's basically aiming to be the perfect game. It was pitched as an artistic tribute to the Halo universe, and from what we've seen so far, it's certainly a beautiful looking game. Now, I've been following this game for a while, and I'm truly aboard the hype train. Now, whilst Installation 01 doesn't use any Microsoft-owned assets that are taken directly from the Halo games, the team are essentially using a number of Microsoft and/or 343 industry intellectual properties to make the game, including things like the player and vehicle models, the existing Halo maps, the phrase Halo itself, and the weapons and gear that can be found within the game. Now, fans of the game will also note that the game's name takes its name from one of the Halo rings created by the Forerunners in the Halo universe. So how are they doing all this without getting a call from 343 or Microsoft's lawyers? It's a fan game. They can't do it, right? Well, for once they actually can. At least for now, anyway. Why? Well, two reasons. Firstly, they asked. Well, by asked, I understand one of their team sent 419 faxes of their face to 343 until they finally replied. At least that's what their blog says, and I choose to believe it happened exactly this way. After a few attempts by Soon Studios, 343 got in touch, arranged a Skype call with them, gave them the green light to continue, and asked them to keep in touch with the progress of the development. Now, like I said at the end of my Pokemon Uranium video, the best step when creating a fan game is to reach out to the content owners before you start, tell them about your project, and ask them if they're okay with you using their content as you plan. If they do say yes, they'll probably ask for regular updates like 343 did, and usually get you to sign some kind of agreement that manages how you can use their intellectual property. Which brings me on to my second point, this, the Microsoft Game Content Usage Rules. Now, in this document, Microsoft have basically given permission to use their intellectual property connected to their own games, except Minecraft, because you know, money, provided you follow certain rules and provide them with certain rights. Now, they're not just specific to fan games, but I'll focus on fan games for this video, of course. I've put a link to the copy of the rules that I'm referencing in this video, and you can keep an eye on the rules from time to time from the link I've posted below. Now, because of these magic words, Microsoft's words, not mine, provided a fan game follows these rules, it's not intellectual property infringement to use the various Microsoft content in your own project. But of course, it comes at a price. So what are the requirements under this document? There's a few, but I'll highlight the main ones. Now, for starters, the game has to be non-commercial, basically meaning you can't make any real money from it outside of limited options like YouTube advertising revenue. You also can't create anything that's lewd, obscure, discriminatory, pornographic, illegal, or criminal. You can't also use the game to promote any crimes against humanity, including genocide or torture, just in case you were thinking of doing that. You also can't give the impression that Microsoft is involved in the project or use their logos within the game to do so. Now, on this point, the content rules don't magically give you permission to use everything in a game, only the Microsoft assets. If Master Chief had Coca-Cola branding on his armor, then Soon Studios couldn't just magically use that in their game. There's a specific term of the content rules that you can't infringe another person's intellectual property with whatever you create. Now, awesomely though, you can use this agreement to use Halo 3 music for non-profit projects due to an agreement that Microsoft has with the composer, which is pretty cool even though Installation 01 doesn't use it. You also can't title anything you create under the agreement in a way that's considered confusing, like naming your Halo fan game Halo 6. Now, as far as I can tell, Soon Studios are complying with all of these terms. Installation 01 is not intended to be a paid-for product, They're extremely transparent on their website about this being a fan game, and none of the content appears to promote anything lewd. So all in all, Microsoft's usage rules are a pretty neat set of rules for anyone wanting to make a fan game based on Microsoft games. But enough with the happiness. I wouldn't be a lawyer if I couldn't ruin Microsoft's good intentions with a little bit of legal analysis. Whilst it's great to see one of the AAA giants offering this kind of thing, and whilst I think that Microsoft usage rules are awesome, could they just change their mind about the agreement and halt development in the future? Oh boy, yes. Behind the playful banter of "these are the magic words from our lawyers" at the beginning of the document lies, in my view, quite a limited and vague license, being what is known as a limited and revocable license. Now what this means is if Microsoft one day decide they don't like what installation is about or the direction in which it's heading, they can pull the plug and shut the content down. They don't even need to give a reason. More on licenses in general in Lawful 101 to come. Now to go even further, if Microsoft decides that Installation 01 is doing particularly well and wants to cash in on that, they can take the game themselves and develop it further without Suceed Studios' involvement. If Suceed Studios created a new storyline that 343 or Microsoft ran off with, it's theirs and Suceed Studios has no ownership of it. This is because by using the usage rules, you're granting Microsoft a worldwide license to use whatever you've created. Now I do like that Microsoft blame their lawyers here, stating that they need to do this to avoid frivolous lawsuits, and that kind of makes sense. If you inadvertently created content similar to, say, Halo 6, in theory you could hold up the release of that game by suing Microsoft through the courts for saying that they ripped off your idea with Halo 6, even though they arrived at that decision themselves. Which brings me to a very important lesson: always blame your lawyer. Is this shady? Not really, but it's probably a grey area depending on your personal viewpoint. At the end of the day, it's Microsoft content, and it's up to them how the game studios involved with their content use it. Otherwise, it would be like you inviting me to your house for a party and me refusing to leave afterwards, saying that I had a say in who lives at your house so could stay for as long as I wanted. Clearly my stay is intended just to be for the party, not longer, and it's kind of the same with Microsoft's property here. I guess my only criticism is there could be more balance for the developers like Suceed Studios, who are putting a lot of time and effort into developing games based on this content and have developed quite a solid fan base as a result. I'd personally like to see some added protection for those developments taking place under the content rules, such that permission couldn't be withdrawn at will once it was given out. The developers would have to actually do something to warrant permission being taken away, otherwise it's very up in the air. But them the rules we got, and to be fair, Microsoft are leading the way of this and I can kind of see where they're coming from. So will Installation 01 be stricken from existence by Microsoft like the Halo Online? Now it's not really a legal question as such, but I think it's unlikely. There seems like there's a good relationship between the two studios, and Microsoft and 343 seem to like the transparent approach Suceed Studios are taking to the use of their intellectual property. And it doesn't seem like that's going to change soon. After all, at the moment it's pretty win-win for Microsoft, who will be able to soak up some free publicity when Installation 01 launches. Now I think it's generally safer that this is a multiplayer only game. There's no storyline that could unintentionally infringe any future 343 content. Someone in the last Fan Game Takedown video made a very interesting comment about possible future legal protections for fan-made games. Could we ever see something like Microsoft's usage rules converted into law? This would mean someone could create a fan game without needing the permission of the owner, provided they complied with a number of legal requirements. This would be somewhat similar to fair dealing, which is a defense to copyright that I'll be discussing in my next Lawful 101 video. Now for this model to work, I imagine we need to have some few rules set down. For starters, I think it would need to be made clear at the outset of the game that it's fan-made and identify the original author. Secondly, I think that any kind of obscene or offensive content would need to be specifically prohibited. If you were to take away the ability for someone to object to the use of their intellectual property in certain circumstances, then this would need to be balanced by preventing their content being used in a derogatory way. And thirdly, just like Microsoft's usage rules, imagine any project would need to be non-commercial, i.e. not sold for money, unless the content creator specifically agreed to it. Now regrettably, I don't think we're likely to see anything like this anytime soon. But that being said, defenses to intellectual property infringements are expanding. Things like parody, pastiche and caricatures are all protected under many jurisdictions now, and this list will probably expand with time. To fan games, who knows, we'll see. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Fan Game Takedown. Are you excited about playing Installation 01 when it gets released? Let me know in the comments and tune in next time when we'll be looking at one of the most notorious fan games, AM2R, another Metroid 2 remake. On a separate note, if you're in the UK and have any burning legal questions that relate to video games, and you want to discuss these in person and happen to be in Dundee on the 8th of February or Cardiff on the 19th, I'll be giving a talk at the UK hub calls in those locations on the legal mechanics behind promoting your brand. You can find the sign up links below. I'm also at GDC in San Fran in March if you happen to be there as well. I'm keen to speak to any indie developers with legal questions for an AMA style video on the main concerns indie developers have about the law. Until then, I'm the Indie Lawyer. Catch you later.